What is up, everybody? My name is Austin Buckner. I am from the Ice Cream Sunday podcast, and I am drinking at Moe's.
All right, everybody, taking time out before we get this show started. That I want to thank Reaper Apparel for having Drinkin' Mo's be a brand ambassador for their clothing line. They got good stuff. They got t-shirts, they got hoodies, they got beanies, they got lots of great stuff. Encouraging everybody to break out of their comfort zone, live their best self, and hey, it's something I try to live every day. Now, be sure when you go and you're finishing filling out your order, use the code Drinking at Moe's, get 10% off, and the link and the code will both be in the description. Let's fucking go. All right, everybody, welcome Drinking at Moe's. Big Mo here, you know the drill, but now YouTube, like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good shit, because YouTube's algorithm is a pain in the ass. Where most places you can find audio podcasts too. And I know you agree. Today, I'm excited to have with me one of the hosts of Ice Cream Sunday podcast, Austin Buckner. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I been a fan of yours personally for a very long time, and obviously this podcast for a long time as well. So it's good to be back in front of a microphone with you.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, you know what? Before I get into that, because yeah, you're right. This isn't our first time in front of a microphone together. But first thing I'd like to start off with everybody with is what got you started as a fan of professional wrestling?
Oh man, that's a great question. My uncle Shane and my grandfather Terry were both huge pro wrestling fans, and actually my great grandma, my grandma's mom, she was a big wrestling fan as well. And the myth, I guess, in Greenfield, Iowa, is Doris. My great grandma was one of the first people to have a color TV in her house, so she would invite people over to watch all the greats when it comes to professional wrestling. Um, and so they'd watch wrestling and they'd watch boxing and they'd all huddle around their TV. So we've been a big pro wrestling family for years. How I got started in it, I guess my first memory was probably I was 4 years old, and for my birthday that year, I got two of the smaller WWF figures, the
Mm.
ones that had like their action moves, and so
Oh, those
uh,
Hasbro's.
yeah, the Hasbro's. That's right. So it's the LJNs are the big rubber ones, and
Mm-hmm.
then the Hasbro's are the smaller ones that move.
Yeah,
Um, my grandparents got me the old school blue ring with the red, white, and blue ropes, and it comes with the belt holder on the side,
yeah.
and then Macho Man Randy Savage and the Million Dollar Man Ted DiBiase were my first two wrestling action figures. So then those two ended up being my favorite wrestlers when I was a kid. I have pictures of me in my grandparents' camper. We would go camping every summer, and I'm laying on my stomach underneath the kitchen table in the camper, reading a WWF magazine. So I've always been a fan. It's kind of come in waves, you know. I think probably growing up in the Attitude Era and then the beginning of the Ruthless Aggression era. Your fandom never really dies, and with
Yeah.
so much access to indie wrestling
Oh,
um, and Japanese wrestling now with the internet, I'm probably a bigger fan now than I've ever been.
oh yeah. No, I definitely had my moments, ups and downs. I know. God, got started watching independent wrestling when I was actually stationed in San Diego. Like I just Googled pro wrestling in San Diego and then
Oh
boom.
wow.
And I've had both of the promoters for that particular promotion on, and a handful of the talent there. They ended up closing down like literally maybe month or so before I got back from deployment.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. So on your downtimes when you kind of step back from your fandom of pro wrestling, what were some of the moments or what were some of the matches or some of the wrestlers that got you back? Because I have a very specific time period where I stopped being a fan for a little bit and then got back into it.
I think it was hearing about TNA actually,
Okay. Yeah,
with
sure.
where I started getting slowly back into it, and then I remember hearing about that crazy Triple X versus America's Most Wanted cage match where Elix Skipper does
Well,
that
Skipper does the
tightrope walk
walk.
on top,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like I see the clip of that, and I'm like, holy shit! And then stuff like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, and yeah, Samoa Joe's still a damn favorite of mine.
Absolutely. So I graduated high school in 2007, and in the summer of 2007 was when the Benoit thing happened.
Oh God, yeah,
Um, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go to college. I'm gonna reinvent myself. I'm gonna be the cool kid. I wasn't a popular kid in high school, but I'm gonna be a
me.
popular kid in college. So I'm gonna go to college and be the cool kid. So I started going to all these parties. My first semester freshman year, I didn't watch any. Actually, my whole freshman year, I didn't watch any wrestling at all. And then my friend Sean, or who ended up being my friend Sean, in one of my summer classes, we were talking about journalism and this feature story about a man who collects these guitars from all over the world. And our professor was like, "Do you guys have any unique collections?" And Sean shot his hand up. He's like, "I collect wrestling DVDs from all over the world. I actually have unique, like European and Japanese DVD players to play these specialized discs." And so I got the courage to ask him after class. I was like, all right, you talk about this Japanese wrestling and this independent wrestling. What is that all about? I've never even heard of this. I was strictly WWE, since, WCW shut down in 2001, ECW shut down in 2001. And so
Yeah.
finally I asked him, and he was like, I have a match to show you that's going to blow your mind if you've only ever watched WWE. And the first major league pro wrestling match I ever watched was Bryan Danielson versus Nigel McGuinness at Unified.
Mm.
Um, and I learned about Ring of Honor, and I was like, I got to learn as much about Ring of Honor as I can. And I don't know if you remember, like back in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, you could get these like Ring of Honor compilation DVDs.
Mm. Yeah, I got a couple.
Yeah, it was like best in the world, and it had wrestlers from all over the world. There was like Ring of Hardcore or something like that, and it
I
had a
have a
bunch of like
like a best
hardcore
of,
death matches.
yeah, I have
Yeah,
like
dude,
best of like a bloodiest matches sort of
that's
thing.
yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So the Best in the World DVD had that Samoa Joe Kenta Kobashi match from New York. I watched that, and then I was like, all right, Kenta Kobashi is the fucking man. Uh, Now I got to find out about Japanese wrestling. So I went and I searched, on YouTube or what I could find of Kenta Kobashi, and that introduced me to the 2003 Kenta Kobashi Mitsuharu Misawa match from Noah. And then from there, it was just like I have to consume as much of this non WWE as possible while still watching Raw, while still watching SmackDown.
Oh yeah.
Ever since then, then I found the local indies like 3X Wrestling and Magnum Wrestling, and if it wasn't for the indies, I'd probably still be a WWE fan. But as
Yeah.
an overall pro wrestling fan, man, going to those shows, meeting those wrestlers, that that hyped up everything for me when I was in college.
Oh, I can totally get you. I actually, funny thing with the Magnum Wrestling is God rest his soul, Jason Strive. I actually met him in California. He was doing a spot show down there,
Yeah.
told me about up here, and then boom, off to the races. So I actually got to tell his parents that at the visitation, which was a nice little experience. But Japanese wrestling, one of my personal favorites right now, though, he would be one that I would have to say that if I had to invest in an interpreter to get him on, oh God, I'm doing it. Tomohiro Ishii.
I love Ishii. I love Ishii.
I love especially when he has a title belt. that it's like he walking to the ring, he just looks like the look on his face is saying, "You're gonna have to fucking kill me to
Yeah.
take this."
Yeah. When I was training in pro wrestling in 2015, I remember Mad Dog McDowell with the 3X Wrestling Training Academy. He told me I'm a strong believer of anyone and any shape, any size, any creed, any background can be a professional wrestler. It's for everybody. And you watch the guys in the 80s WWF like Hulk Hogan, and it's like those are bigger than life guys. And then you see a dude like Ishii. Ishii might be 5'5", 5'6", but he's just built like a barrel and
Oh,
just a completely different and unique body, a different and unique style that you just don't see in the United States. And really, he's very unique in his style in Japan too. He is just he hits like a truck. Like he is the
yeah.
Stone Pitbull is the perfect nickname for Ishii.
Oh, totally. Like he looks like some simple moves. He does them so clean and powerful that like I've joked that sometimes some moves it's like holy shit, he's gonna need a change of pants after that one.
Yeah.
And
To
it's just
your
like
point, yeah, speaking of guys that I think that's why I always loved dudes like Eddie Guerrero and I
mm,
guess guys like Brian Danielson now is that's the style that I wanted to wrestle. I can't do the high flying stuff. I try to learn it, but it would go very poorly. So I like the guys that had the fundamentals down. That's like you take a basic move and you just make it look so pretty. I think back to Steamboat and his
mm.
arm drags. The arm drag, everyone does an arm drag, but no
Yeah.
one does it like Steamboat.
Oh yeah.
Just those guys that can take simple moves and make it their own, put a little spin on it, and make it like their signature and a move that everybody does. But there's something like Shawn Michaels in the super kick. Everyone does a super kick.
Oh yeah.
No
Now it's
one
like crap. Everybody does it.
exactly, but no one does it like Shawn Michaels.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And you know, going back, we mentioned that this is not our first time in front of a microphone together.
Right.
Going back to, I'm going to say it was Wrestle Nerds, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure
yeah,
was.
that was a fun time because I remember just wanting to sit back and like watch from the background, and then y'all brought me over, and
Yeah.
I'm like, holy shit, this is actually happening. Okay.
Yeah, so years before I had Ice Cream Sunday or I hosted Ice Cream Sunday. So we actually started Ice Cream Sunday in 2016. It ran for 14 long, strong episodes before we shut it down. I had a baby and yeah, a lot of things happened back then. But even before that, we had a podcast called Wrestle Nerds. And it was my friend Brian and I. I was living in Lincoln, Nebraska at the time. And so I was traveling to Magnum a lot. And I was traveling also to uh, shows that those Magnum guys are on. And so where I met you was an APW show in a little
Yep.
town called Milo, Iowa. Um,
Milo,
Jeremy
Milo
Jer-
Dome.
Jeremy Jacobs ran that promotion with his brother, and a lot of the Magnum guys were down there. And I wanted to interview Duke and Bo from Guns and Beer, and you just happened to be there, and you were
I
a
think it was
huge
Joey,
fan.
actually.
It was Joey, yeah. It was either Duke or Joey or Bo and Joey. I think it was Duke and Joey.
Duke and
But I just
Joey, yeah.
remember it was just hilarious. And they invited you on as a huge fan of Guns and Beer. And that's how I got to know you. Um, was through that interview. And we just remained really good friends ever since. But yeah, that was the first podcast that you and I were ever on. And it just kind of happened serendipitously.
Oh, yeah. I remember I was telling people that keep an eye out for when this one releases because it still sticks out in my head. The waterfall.
Yeah,
Oh God.
such a good time.
Oh man. I remember everybody like we practically had to stop the episode for like a little bit because everybody was laughing too hard.
Well, even back then, now everyone listens to podcasts and everyone knows who Joe Rogan is and everyone has a favorite podcast. But I think that was before I even started training wrestling. So maybe 2013, 2014 at the latest,
Yeah.
maybe even earlier than that. And so we go to the bar across the street and we're like, hey, we'd love to record a podcast here. And I just remember the bartender like looking at me like, what the fuck is a podcast? And I was like, we'll set up microphones. It's kind of like an internet radio thing. And she's like, yeah, whatever you guys want to do. As long as you're buying beer, I don't care.
Yep. Man, that was a fun night. Luckily, I was staying not too far away because,
That's right.
yeah, I was a little inebriated to say the least, which I think,
Wrestling will do that to you.
oh, yeah, yep. I remember getting to be special guest ring announcer for another Guns and Beer match up in Fargo. And yeah, I got a little hammered.
Was that for Fully Loaded?
Yep.
So that was the furthest I ever wrestled away from home. It wasn't in Fargo, it was in Minot, North Dakota.
Mine not. Yeah, way
And
up.
at a little hotel up there. We had like a double shot. And so I drove up there with the Guns and Beer guys. Obviously Joey was wrestling. I think Sean Nautilus was up there with us. Bo and Duke, and then Chainsaw King. All of those guys were up there. And I wrestled some pre-show matches with um, a young man that I trained with who eventually became Seto Kobara. So
Oh,
yeah, it was a great weekend. Met a lot of good guys, and Fully Loaded has since shut down, but they are still very much my family. I love that promotion.
oh yeah. No, I still talk with the guys behind that every once in a while. That was still fun. I just remember them telling me since I told them I was gonna try to make it to Fargo, they're like, "How would you like to be special guest ring announcer for the match?" I'm like, "You're telling me I get to be in the ring with a microphone?"
Yeah,
Yes, please.
yeah, it's awesome. When I was up there that weekend, I think it was the second show. Guns and Beer wrestled. God, I cannot think of their names. They are they work for 1 Hour Tees and Pro Wrestling Tees now out of Chicago. The tag
I
team. Matt Nix, maybe is that his
Matt
name?
Nix, yeah, I've had
Yeah,
him on.
and his tag team partner, whose name I can never remember, but that tag team match between Bo and Duke, and then Matt Nix and his tag team partner, whose name I forgive me, I forget. Uh, that match was unbelievable. There was a little like bar area, and I remember Matt Nix did like a dive off the top of the roof of that bar area, but just a wonderful weekend. Those guys at Fully Loaded treated us so well and made us feel like family. Even driving 15 hours to get up there from the Omaha area, it was a wonderful time.
Yeah, it was quite the drive, and I made it by myself.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's no fun.
yeah, no, no fun at all. Definitely made a few stops because, yeah, my back after the Navy is not agreeing with me.
Imagine.
Yeah. Now, ice cream Sunday. You
Mhm.
mentioned, there you had it started in 2016, but then you took, family stuff came up. What was actually what got you wanting to start it back then, and then
Yeah.
bring it back?
Well, of course. So 2016, I wanted to start a podcast. I had been podcasting really since 2010, 2011. I first learned about podcasting when I was in college. I went to school for broadcasting and journalism, and our professors had stressed the importance of podcasting in this long form, more more like chats than interviews, more like just two people talking, and you get more information and you get more in-depth interviews that way. So instead of cutting out a few clips for radio or a few quotes for a newspaper, you really get an opportunity to get to know the person. And so these hour-long interviews, these long-form interviews, are going to be important to journalism. So that's how I first learned about it. And I had a podcast called Buck and Boom's Body Slam Hour, which was about pro wrestling, of course. That was even before Wrestle Nerds, and then that
Yeah.
kind of transformed into Wrestle Nerds with a different host. I wanted to kind of get away from just pro wrestling. We would still talk about pro wrestling. I'd still have pro wrestlers on, but also was into hip hop music and mixed martial arts and all of my other interests and hobbies. And so we started a podcast that could be anything, and it ran for 14 episodes. And then, like I said, somewhere in the middle of that, my son was born, and I thought I could juggle both and having a newborn and trying to get together with friends and record a podcast was just really tough at the time. So um, probably once every 2 months, my friend Trevor, who is now my co-host for Ice Cream Sunday, he was like, "You got to bring it back. It was so much fun." And he had a podcast as well called Title Pending with a friend of his named Corey, who since has become our videographer and another co-host of Ice Cream Sunday. And so I said, I'll bring it back, but we have to do it bigger and better than it was in 2016. So researched, the best editing strategies and the best storytelling strategies, and really got to know a lot of people in the art community and obviously the wrestling community. And so in 2022, April of 2022, we brought it back, and it's kind of become like just a cool hangout. And so when we don't have a guest, it's just Trevor and I talking about the things that we are both interested in, whether that's pro wrestling or video games, comic books, just a lot of nerdy stuff, things that you would find at comic book conventions. Really is what it
Yeah.
is. So those kind of fandoms. And then when we do have a guest on, it can be anything. Our first episode was my friend Morgan, and she's a cancer survivor and now an advocate for cervical cancer research and those early screenings. And we had her on, and then we've had a bunch of pro wrestling personalities on, from Logan Davis at Magnum Wrestling to John West with Black Wrestlers Matter,
Mhm.
the Wrestle League champion out of Chicago, the Ewok. We've had a lot of those guys on too. So um, once we brought it back, and I think once we got past that 14 episode threshold, once we had more episodes than we did the first run, it was like I don't see it stopping. And now we're recording this on a Friday night. 2 days from now, as of this recording, we'll be at episode 103. So that's more than 103 hours of content that we put out. Um, I'm going to be honest with you. I thought we'd probably make it another dozen, 13, 14 episodes, and we'd get tired of it. And here we are doing stuff like this and being invited onto other people's podcasts, and getting the opportunity to promote ourselves at comic book conventions all over the Midwest, and hosting our own events. And it's just kind of taken off on a life of its own. It's more than a podcast now. It's
No,
kind of
yeah.
become this weird institution and this weird weekly tradition for a lot of people. So it's
No,
been
yeah.
fun to watch our little baby grow up.
Oh yeah. No, I've been enjoying it. I like, especially in the summer when I have to go out and mow my yard.
Yeah.
More often than not, I'm popping in Ice Cream Sunday and listening to that as I'm mowing, and makes it go by a little quicker. I don't hate mowing my
I think
yard,
that
but
too. When I listen to podcasts, I think that all of my tasks that I do, they go by a lot quicker, whether it's work or mowing the lawn or working out. I think it was actually Dolph Ziggler on a podcast that said that he does audio, or he does cardio to podcasts instead of music, because he doesn't want to get off of his rhythm based on like how fast the BPMs of the song are. So he listens to podcasts. I think he probably said that 10 years ago on a podcast. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So now I do everything listening to a podcast now, and get
uh,
my inspiration for our own show. So yeah.
oh yeah, and kind of the same thing with my podcast here. My dog wanted to join me, like I mentioned, but I started off. I believe it was actually Bogat was he had talked about doing one, and then like I heard he recorded a few, but then as schedules do, got a little bit too busy to do it. And then I just got to thinking I could do that, and then I just started looking up different platforms to use. Uh, then just started asking people. I started off with people here in the Omaha area.
Yeah.
Like I think my first episode was actually Pat Powers, and
I
then
love Pat.
oh yeah, and then I think it was either Fowler, Joey, and Bo were my next ones. Then I just got to thinking, damn it, I'm gonna run out of people sooner or later. Like it's so I just remembered I tweeted something about a wrestler out in California, and then not realizing that the SATs were gonna like it. They liked it. And I'm like, this was right around the time they had those matches with the Briscoes and the Hardys. And I'm like, holy, this might be a long shot. And then boom, I've talked to them a few times, and then it just snowballed from there. The promoter of Warrior Wrestling, I've had him on multiple times doing pre-shows for them, getting to do stuff at FanFest. Um, Speaking of Ring of Honor, Kerry Silkin, which that blew my damn mind
Yeah.
because that was one of them. I was definitely like, holy no, it's going to be a long shot, but the answer is always no if you don't ask. So I
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
and
And you'd be surprised how often the answer is yes when you do ask.
oh
It's kind of amazing. So when we had Wrestle Nerds, I remember I was traveling to Chicago for a Ring of Honor show. This was a long time ago. This is probably 2013, 2012. And we were traveling to Chicago for Ring of Honor. We stopped in Iowa City the night before, and there was a oh gosh, what was Rikishi's indie promotion? It had like a gimmick where it was like city team versus city territory league.
hmm,
So we actually stopped in Iowa City for a show there, and I can't remember what wrestler it was, but it was a wrestler from the Iowa City area. He was there. He wasn't on the card. But remember, like I think maybe Maddie Starr
mm,
was on the show, and Ryan Slade was on that show, and they got me, all of them kind of worked together to get me an interview with Rikishi. And so I grabbed my stuff out of the car and I set it up. And Rikishi was like, "Hey, do you care if Brian Christopher sits in on this?" And I was like, "Of course." And Jerry Lawler had just had his heart attack
mm,
on Monday. And this was the first time Brian Christopher had ever talked to anyone about his father almost passing away on national television. And so I was the first interview that Brian Christopher did after his father had that heart attack. And just to hear him talk about, he thinks that Jerry Lawler's straight edge lifestyle helped him survive that, and both of them growing up as second generation wrestlers and growing up with the family and getting an opportunity to ask those questions to guys that you've idolized since you were in elementary school. It's a huge deal. And like you said, if you never ask, it's always going to be no. And it's surprising how many times the answer is yes when you do ask.
oh yeah, like hell, I've got to literally talk with the guys that invented the Spanish fly.
Yeah.
And oh god, who was the other one I was just thinking of? Damn it. Ah, you brought up first time talking with the about his father there. One of my favorite episodes that I've done was actually with Jake Christ.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And it was right after I asked him right after the video came out of that promo of him burning the IWA Mid South belt.
Mhm.
And if you the way I love talking about how I asked him to come on because it reminds me of you remember watching the rise and fall of ECW and how Paul Heyman talked about getting Stone Cold to come to ECW. It's like, you got a grievance. I got a show. That was pretty much what I told him. I'm like, you got a grievance and a story. I got a show. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
And then
Absolutely.
boom. And yeah, literally ever since, I think he's pretty much been on every Revolver show I've been to since. And oh yeah, when I took a friend of mine with me for his first Revolver show, I remember, you know, he told me afterwards, you hear people talk about, oh, so and so knows me there. I've talked to them. And then like wrestlers that I had talked to either for the podcast or just in general were like coming up to me, and he was like, "Holy crap, you weren't kidding."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's awesome. Just like as a friend, I've probably known you well over a decade at this point.
yeah,
And just to watch your show really become an institution, especially among independent wrestling fans, it's been awesome. It like Mo's gonna be at those shows anyway, like we talked about Revolver and Magnum, Mo's gonna be there anyway. Might as well get a microphone in front of some wrestlers' faces.
Oh yeah, and hell, it's freaking snowballed into. I've lost count of how many people that I've interviewed from Matt Tremont's promotion, and
Sure.
yeah, like it started off with Chris Bradley, and then I, like I said, I think I have a ring announcer coming up, and I think besides Tremont himself, there's maybe only a handful left that I haven't talked to.
That's awesome. Are you getting to the point now where wrestlers will reach out to you and want to be on your show instead of you having to go out and ask them?
It it literally happens a few times a month.
Yeah.
Like I literally, the first one I scheduled for June was actually one of those. Like
That's awesome.
I was on my way to work. I work in Lincoln, and all of a sudden I see a Facebook Messenger alert, and I get parked. And I look down. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
I met a young girl. She's probably in her early 20s. I say young girl because I'm in my mid 30s now. But she's probably in her early 20s, 22, 23, and she's a musician in the Des Moines area. She just graduated college in the Des Moines area, and she's just working as a barista at Starbucks. And she just released her first single on Spotify.
oh,
And she's like, "Hey, I came across your podcast through like Instagram Reels or TikToks or something. I just saw a video and I saw that you were in the Des Moines area, and so I'd love to be on the podcast and just talk about my music. I make English language music, but it's very K-pop inspired. And I'd love to get more eyes on my music. And it's just weird to think like, oh, I don't really even think we're that big. I think that our biggest platform's Facebook. We have like 1,300 people, and the people want to use an interview on our show to hopefully get a bigger following. And it's just kind of weird that to even think that we would have that kind of sway or that kind of pull. And so wrestlers coming to you and being like, hey, I'd like to get my name out there, I'd love to be on your
yeah.
podcast. It's kind of a cool feeling.
Oh yeah, it totally is. Like I know starting out, I not thinking I'd have anything like that, and now, God, inching past 250 episodes now, and
Crazy.
I'm just like, holy crap! Like what got me laughing when I got to 200 was I had just broke 100 right before WrestleMania 39.
Oh, wow.
And then it hadn't even gotten to WrestleMania 40 yet. And I'm already breaking 200. I'm like,
Yeah.
holy crap.
Yeah,
And
you're
yeah,
putting out content all the time. We're very regimented. We called it Ice Cream Sunday for a reason. We're only doing one episode a week on Sundays. You wake up and we dropped it at midnight, so you'd always know when it is. And you have just been hustling. It's been awesome to see. It's been awesome to see you crossing that 100,000 views threshold on YouTube recently as well.
oh God, yeah. When I noticed how close I was, like I don't post a lot about, oh, if we get to this, I'll do. Well, that one, I'm like, okay, like get me past this.
Yeah.
And
It,
now I I don't think, well, I knew I had it lined up, but I didn't know I was going to use it at the time for this. But as of recording, the celebration for that 100,000 is actually my episode with Akira.
Hero's the man.
Oh, loved it. That was so fun. And well, somebody makes a short little cameo in there.
Oh, I wonder who that could be.
I wonder. But yeah, like you look at, for those that'll watch the video version, yeah, she's there. Like just very
Sure.
short.
Just to give Akira his flowers for a second, I remember my friend Zach actually is a big deathmatch wrestling fan. And he was like, I know that I watch a little bit of deathmatch, but I don't know a whole lot about it. And he just messaged me and he goes, this is the smoothest deathmatch wrestler I've ever seen. And it was Akira. Like, I think sometimes deathmatch wrestling gets that negative stereotype where it's just like dudes that couldn't make it as like technical wrestlers, and they just hit each other with light tubes or throw each other through tables or doors now. Um, and you watch a guy like Akira, and you're like, no, that dude is everything, and he just happens to love to get bloody, but
Oh
he
yeah.
is a tremendous professional wrestler.
Oh yeah. No, and he actually, little teaser, he actually talks about that's what he's wanting to do is with his career is be like showing people, hey, whether it's deathmatch, whether it's regular wrestling, this dude can go. And
Yeah.
that is, I'm a fan of deathmatch wrestling myself. And the thing that often comes up is when it's done right, it's just like any other form of wrestling. You just got the
Yeah.
deathmatch element surrounding it. And good Lord, I'm trying to. Oh, took me damn near a year, but I actually got one of his wrestling buddies behind me, John Wayne
Oh,
Murdoch.
that's oh yes. Yeah.
Him,
Yeah.
let's see, Alex Cologne was one of my first big ones.
I was just going to mention the both of them together. I really enjoyed. I think it was probably the majority of last year, maybe even into 2022. I got into GCW really heavily over the pandemic, and their rivalry, Alex
Oh,
Cologne and John Wayne Murdoch's rivalry, and then them coming together as a tag team has been really, really fun to watch in GCW.
oh yeah, the Mega Bastards, I think is what they were calling them.
It's
Yeah,
exactly right.
that was epic. And yeah, I remember having Alex Cologne on because I was a fan of his since I think I watched one of the Art of War Games shows
Yes. Yes.
and saw him there. And I'm like, holy crap, I need to get this guy on. And we got done. And he mentioned he was selling off his old kick pads because he was trying to invest in some new ones. I'm like, how much? He's like, make me an offer. I did. And now I got signed ring worn kick pads of his.
Awesome. Yeah, just watching guys like Akira do what he's doing now in MLW, along with
Mm,
Ricky Shane Page, who I think is known primarily for some fans as a deathmatch guy as well. To see what they're doing right now in MLW has been really, really interesting. Going back to just how smooth Akira is in the ring, it reminds me of the criticisms of Darby Allin in
yeah.
AEW. Will Darby Allin get on a 20-foot ladder and jump off and do some absolutely insane, dumb shit that he probably shouldn't be doing? Absolutely. But then you watch him from a pure wrestling perspective, and that man has some of the prettiest footwork I've ever seen. He's very, very smooth in the ring, and the way that he sells and fights from underneath, it's everything you want in a babyface wrestler.
Oh, yeah. Him and Orange Cassidy along the same lines there. Just
Yep,
smooth as hell in there. And just so their movements are so clean. And it just, mm,
absolutely.
I'm a little interested to see where they go with this thing with Orange Cassidy and Don Callis. That's going to be
I'm very interested to see what happens there. Um, I think back to maybe was it the first Forbidden Door that Will Ospreay wrestled Orange Cassidy?
it might have been. It was.
I think
It's
I
been
think
on
it
one of them.
was, but that match was. I mean, I think that match really showed that Orange Cassidy is bigger than just this kind of lazy guy gimmick. He can go in the ring, and I'm wondering if they kind of harken back to that with Will Ospreay becoming a bigger baby face and maybe maybe Don Callis needs to put his eggs in a new basket.
Hey, that might work. It like there's those wrestlers that just you don't see them as a heel.
Mm-hmm.
Orange Cassidy is one of them for me, but I'm interested like you. I'm interested to see where this goes.
Yeah, yeah, it could be a lot of fun to watch.
Now, going back to the ice cream Sunday, I had a question. Who are some of the favorite guests that you've had on so far that out of the times that you have them on?
So it really depends on what you classify as favorite. Because obviously, I love having my homies on. Jack Stamper was a great episode because I grew up with him. I've known him since kindergarten, and we became really, really good friends. Not until sixth grade, but then when we became friends in sixth grade, he was at my wedding. I was in his wedding. The night that I found out that my grandfather passed away, I was actually DJing his wedding. So yeah, we've been through a lot together. And so to have him on and kind of talk and reminisce about high school and some dumb shenanigans that we've got up to over the years, that's been fun. Dustin Wilson has been on the show a handful of times as well. He's a friend of mine from college. Those are some of my favorites, just because they're close friends of mine. But then
Yeah.
you have people that you're not expecting to click with, and maybe you don't know very well. And so I've had Matt Miller. He's a previous host of Post Game Lobby, which is all about video games. And he plays a lot of video games that I don't play. I play a lot of like single player action adventure games like Grand Theft Auto, or I play Red Dead Redemption.
Mm.
I'm really into Fallout 4 right now because of the Amazon Prime series.
Oh yeah.
So I've been playing that, and he plays a lot more like multiplayer online games like
Mm.
Destiny. And so you'd think that the two of us would have very little in common, and he ended up being like one of the most charismatic dudes ever. So another one was Morgan Newman, our very first episode. Um, I think we all went into Ice Cream Sunday thinking it was going to be jokes about our dicks and farts like it was in 2016. Maybe getting too drunk, maybe getting too high, and making a podcast that a lot of it was unintelligent gibberish. And then we have Morgan Newman on, and she talks about her cancer diagnosis and um, how important it is to do those early screenings and traveling all over the United States and um, advocating for women's health. And then the show becomes something way different than we anticipated it was going to be. So um, every episode is a little bit different, and every episode's special. And I keep thinking that I have my favorite episodes, and then I go back and listen to one that I haven't thought about in years, and I'm like, no, that's my favorite episode. And um,
Mm.
the opportunity to go back and watch, like, and I'm sure you've done this as well, like your YouTube shorts or your TikToks, and you're like, oh yeah, that's a funny moment, and kind of reminisce on episodes you might have forgotten about. That's the fun part for me. But yeah, we have some upcoming episodes as well, some that we've already recorded that don't have any guests. We talk about, um, you know, Warner Brothers shutting down Rooster Teeth and the U.S. government maybe banning TikTok. And we have another episode that's all about the Fallout video games and the Fallout show. And even the ones that we don't have guests on, those can be fun too.
Oh, I can imagine. Your friend that had the cancer diagnosis. One of actually, much like you, every episode I feel has something special. But I ended up getting to have one of the guys that was in my first ever independent show on, and it was SoCal Crazy down in Southern California,
Yeah.
and I remembered he had been going through cancer himself. It was colon cancer, and I was like, oh, I don't think he's gonna want to be on right now, but like, see in the future, and that boom, he came on, and I was actually one of the people that got to uh, help kind of push the news out there that he got got to be in remission, and he did a charity show, and it was in between when he announced it and when it happened. I've talked about it. My wife and I were pregnant with twin girls, and they decided to show up really early and only made it a week. It was why I got this tattoo on my arm. And
Yeah.
I remember he was one of the first people I personally talked to about it. And he, we had him on again to, hype up the show. And he's like, write up something for me. We're going to the show is also dedicated to them. I'm like, you do not have to do that. And he's like, your family. No, it's happening. So yeah, that one, while every episode's special, that one's the ones with him hold a special place in my heart for sure. And he's actually, it came back. So definitely pulling for him there. I always say anytime I get a chance to shout him out, by all
Yeah.
means, I'm doing it. But
I think
yeah,
for me, one of the most special episodes that we've done is I had Logan Davis from Magnum Wrestling on, and we did the interview over the phone, and then I released it the week before the return show. It was the very first Magnum Wrestling show after Strife had passed away.
yeah,
So the very first weekend at Strife's,
yeah.
and I told Logan, I said, my grandma listens to the show, and she knows nothing about pro wrestling. And a lot of Ice Cream Sunday listeners probably don't know or care about pro wrestling. So do I want to talk about the wrestlers and talk about the card a little bit and what people will see if they go to the show? Absolutely. But what I'd really like to focus on was your relationship with Strife
Mm.
and how Strife was feeling in those final days of his life, and um, what it means to continue on his legacy, and how you plan to do that, and how everyone at Magnum plans to do that. I think that's going to be more impactful for my listeners than a show about your upcoming wrestling show. And for him to talk about the relationship with Strife, and for a lot of people that know Jason Strife as a pro wrestler, to get to learn a little bit about who Nathan Blodgett was as a person was was awesome, and truly an honor and a privilege for me to be able to produce that episode and release that episode and have that be on my platform, because as much as he gave me a hard time about being like a short fat piece of shit, Jason Strife was the fucking man, and
Mm.
one of my favorite people I've ever met in my life, and gone way too soon. And
Oh,
to play a little part in being able to honor his memory, was so special, and to be a major interview that Logan was able to do before that show, and then a year later, I didn't even realize that we released this. I said we're going to release this episode the week before the next Magnum wrestling show, and I did an episode with Jeremy Hall this year
mm.
and released it the weekend before, the Sunday before, the next weekend at Strifes. So I told both Jeremy uh, and Logan, I said, screw it. I think this just becomes an annual tradition that we always have a Magnum Wrestling show, the what Magnum Wrestling podcast the week before weekend at Strifes, and allow that to be, my way of continuing to honor the memory of a very good friend of mine and a man that I admired more than just about anybody I've ever met in wrestling.
Oh yeah, I've got plenty of great memories with him. Like I mentioned, meeting up with him in California, and when they actually brought Ricardo Rodriguez in a few years ago, and they played a match leading up to it that was actually in California with them two, and I'm like I'm like, holy shit, there's me front row, and I'm like, but yeah, I owe that man a lot. He, you know, let me come in and early and interview wrestlers. He he's the episode that got away. Like I had him scheduled, but then that was right close to the time where things started to really go downhill. And, we kind of just had to be like, you know what, if you come out on the other side of this, we'll get you on. And, you know, stuff happens. And, yep, that was fun memories because, hell, without him, who knows if I would have met anybody back here. hell, who knows if I would have even met my damn wife, because I actually met my wife at PWP.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was funny because I look back on it, and Brandon Juarez was trying to get me to go. He trying to get me to go for a while, and was like, fine, they got a show on a day I got off. I'll go. And I don't think I had been there maybe 40, 45 minutes. And I'm eyeing her. I'm like, oh, she's beautiful. And then I think we both kind of thought, yeah, he probably saw us. And it's like, here.
Yep.
And then best man at my wedding, and Chris, the guy that runs PWP, was actually the officiant.
Just absolutely one of the most loving, caring, nicest dudes I've ever met is Chris Havius. And
Oh yeah.
from an outsider's perspective looking in, that man does not look like he would be nice at all. And then you meet him, and that's a homie. Like he's a sweetheart of a man. But I promised myself that I wasn't going to talk about much of my own bullshit wrestling career that I had for a few years. But you brought up Brendan Juarez, Donnie Pepper Cricket, and so I wrestled in 2015, and much like the podcast, that went to the wayside because you know I got a girl pregnant and we were having a kid, and I was moving out of the Des Moines area, and I wasn't going to be close to 3X Wrestling anymore. When I moved back to Des Moines, I got back into wrestling. I got back into 3X Wrestling, and there was the show that I debuted at in 2015 was a free show in Union Park in Des Moines. It's called Clowns at the Carousel, and it's just an outdoor show at Union Park, and it's where I made my debut in 2015 against a wrestler named Sentai. And when I came back in 2018, I said that's where I want to have my return match. And Mark McDowell, Mad Dog McDowell, my trainer, was like, "Is there anyone in particular that you'd like to wrestle?" And I said, "I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this. I'll probably flake out like I did in 2015." And lo and behold, I did. But I said, I really want to wrestle Donnie Pepper Cricket. And so I messaged Donnie, and I said, "Hey, man, I know this is out of the blue, but I've always admired you as a wrestler, and more importantly as a person, and I would love if you would want to come down and wrestle me." And on a free show, one of the legends of this area, one of the most popular, one of the best, one of the longest running veterans of this area, was like, "Yeah, I'll wrestle this kid that has absolutely no business being in the ring with me. Why not?" Um, for him to travel, I mean, I think he lives in like the Council Bluffs, Omaha area. So for
he,
him
yeah,
to
he
hop
lives
on
in.
I-80 and travel to Des Moines for a free show showed that he wasn't getting paid to wrestle little old me. That meant the world to me. And those moments don't come too often, especially for a guy that had such little experience in the business. And um, man, Donnie's the best. Donnie is the best.
Oh yeah, I've not any great words. I don't think any of them would do justice for what that guy has meant to me personally. So before we get into too big of a tangent, I do want to go over this live show that you are doing.
Oh yeah.
So it's uh June 22nd, I believe, right?
Yes, June 22nd. It's called the Ice Cream Social. Little play on words there, the name of our podcast. It's going to be in my hometown of Greenfield, Iowa. There's a beautiful building there called the Warren Cultural Center. It is a refurbished opera house from 1896 that they reopened in 2012. I've always wanted to do something there, whether it was music or when I wrestled, having a wrestling match inside that building, which might still happen. But we're doing a live podcast and a night of music there. So it'll be Ice Cream Sunday doing a live podcast with Wendy Lane, who's also from Greenfield, Iowa. She is an Emmy Award winning journalist who recently moved back to Greenfield. and we'll get an opportunity to talk to her and see some of her stories. She's a multimedia journalist, so being able to see some of her stuff, and then we're gonna have a great party with a band called Night Like This. From the Des Moines, Iowa area. They play a lot of like early 2000s pop punk covers.
Okay.
Um, and then an after party with a man that I know you know very well, DJ Beat Drop,
Oh yeah.
just down the street at the bowling alley, the biggest and best bar in my little town of 1,800 people. So um, I want to get as many people from out of town to come to Greenfield and see what made growing up there so special. It has Ice Cream Sunday's name on it, the show, but really it's an opportunity to just showcase my hometown and the things I love about it. There's not too many opportunities for a town of that size to get a night of a great band and great entertainment and just let loose and have fun. And we decided to make it June 22nd. And hopefully we turn this into an annual thing where we can kind of make it a party to celebrate the official start of summer. So
That
yeah, it'll be fun. Tickets are available now. You can find them on all of our social media at the letter I, the letter C, the word Sunday, like the day of the week podcast. So IC Sunday podcast, or icecreamsundaypodcast.com. There's a link to buy tickets. They're $10. So try to make it as affordable as possible. And Warren Cultural Center, they do a cool thing where anyone under the age of 18, they get in for free. So they love bringing those young people, those students to the Warren Cultural Center to enjoy the arts. I can't say enough good things about them. They've been awesome partners in planning and promoting this show as well.
that is awesome. I've thought about similar stuff for the podcast, whether it be in the Omaha area or hell, even in my hometown, although I don't seem to have as many fond memories of mine as you seem to have of yours. Oh man. Yeah. I remember being excited when I enlisted and there'd be people that I'd tell that I knew and they laughed at me. So I was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
I was just like I used that as my motivation whenever anything got tough during my enlistment. I'm like, I am not proving them right. And then now it's like they completely flipped. And I'm like, I remember you.
See, it's one of those things where I think I think we talked about this in the video that we released, kind of the teaser video for our live event back in we published that back in January, I think. But it was, you talk about wanting to leave your hometown, and it's in all of our music. I grew up on pop punk music, and it was always like I gotta leave home, um, and now that we're older and a little wiser, you look back on those fond memories, and even if it's just you know, especially living in a small town, everyone I've ever met up until I was 18 years old lived in that town. So the fond memories I have aren't the town itself, like I don't care about the local government or, any of that, but all of my friends were there, and so
Oh yeah.
um to bring some of those people back and then out of towners and they get to see this really cool building that I've always wanted to do something in and to be able to show my friends from Minneapolis like hey this is the house I grew up in and also meet my grandma, she's cool as fuck, that's a lot of those things make it special. So
Oh yeah.
if nothing else it'll be fun to kind of show off Greenfield, Iowa for a night.
Oh yeah. No, there's definitely a building in my hometown that if I could, it would definitely be a spot to do it. But yeah, no, getting to show off your hometown. Like I know my parents grew up in the Sandhills, way up north, close to South Dakota,
Really?
and we recently went up for a relative's 80th birthday, and some of my nieces and nephews had never been up there.
Oh
So
wow.
my mom was showing them around the town, like this is where grandma grew up, and this she lived there, and she went to school there, and she was having a blast with it.
Well, I don't get the opportunity to take my kids to Greenfield very often, but just so happened a weekend that I had my children because they typically, most of the time live with their mom, and I have visitation. So uh, Heather Holder from Ice Cream Sunday. She's kind of our business manager, keeps us organized. She's Trevor's wife. She is part of a steel pan group, and they were performing at the Warren Cultural Center in Greenfield. And so I wanted to go down there and support her. And so I said, yeah, I'll just take my kids down there to that concert. And I told my oldest, Kingston, I said, we're going to Greenfield on Saturday night. He goes, what's Greenfield? He'd been there before, but it had been so long that he didn't remember. And I was like, it's my hometown. That's where I grew up. And so to be able to kind of bring him back to where he would remember, he's 8 now, and show him, hey, this is the house that I grew up in. This is where Grandma Ardith lives. This is where we're gonna do our event in June. This is the playground I used to play at. This is my elementary school. This is my high school. Like to get to
Yeah.
show my kids all of those things was pretty special as well. So yeah.
Oh, I can only imagine. And well, I got some news that I will share off camera
Okay.
in regards to that because I'm hoping and praying that, I get the opportunity for something like that because, yeah, I've never been one of those that just said, oh, I'm not having kids. I'm like, I always imagined at some point. So
I
now,
was one of those guys that said, like I never want kids. And then I had a kid and then I was like, well, now I'm never gonna stop having kids. And I have three now. So and then, that's with my ex-wife and who knows, that there might be more kids on the way someday
yeah,
with my new wife. So we'll
yeah,
we'll see what happens. But
yeah, we'll
yeah,
see
man,
what happens. Yeah, it things have a way of working out.
they sure do.
Now, you mentioned a mutual friend of ours, DJ
I sure
Petro,
did. Yeah.
and he has a show that we are going to be in front of a microphone yet again
Yes. Third
as
time's a charm.
the commentary team for Fight Against Suicide Overcome. That is shaping up to be a really nice show. Like,
Yeah, so I've talked to Dustin about this show a little bit, but I'm like, hey, keep me under wrap. Like I don't want to know anything that the public doesn't know, other than obviously me being on commentary, you being on commentary, but the wrestlers, I don't want to know anything about it. And so every time he posts something on that Facebook page, I'm like, this is gonna be juicy. Because there's a lot of guys here locally, some new wrestlers that I haven't got an opportunity to meet yet, but then some wrestlers, I think of like JC Slater. I've
yeah.
known him forever. I've never called his match. I used to do commentary for 3X Wrestling. I don't think I've ever called a JC Slater match. So that's going to be fun. And just, it'll be a family reunion, really. I haven't been out to the Omaha area since I wrestled. I haven't wrestled for 6 years, and so a lot of those guys I haven't seen in many many years. So it'll be great to share a locker room and be able to call matches for those guys. It'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see you again as well.
Oh, definitely. Definitely be great to see you in person. I know I'm particularly excited to get to. Never thought I'd be saying this for my debut on commentary, getting to call a cheeseburger match.
Oh yeah, yeah. Cheeseburger's the man. I've met
Oh,
him once before at a Ring of Honor show. He did like a pre-show match, and then he was doing like a meet and greet kind of during intermission, and he's just could not be more a nicer guy. When a guy like Jushin Thunder Liger, who's been around the business for decades, considers you like one of his favorite people in wrestling, you're doing something right. And
oh,
Cheeseburger is one of Jushin Liger's favorite wrestlers. So it'll be fun to get an opportunity to see him again.
oh yeah. And then, good Lord, the talent they got coming in. Like I've been, talking with Dustin a little bit. He tells me little bits here and there. And yeah, some of the matches that are going to be happening, it's going to be fun. It is
Yeah,
going to be.
I told Dustin that like how that whole thing came together was pretty crazy. I asked him, I said, and I was kind of, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, but I was like, so who do you have for commentary? And he's like, well, I'd love to get Mo from Drinking at Mo's on commentary. And I was like, does he have a partner or is he, doing it Joey Styles way, just one man? And he's like, no, I don't have a partner for him. And I was like, do you got someone recording commentary? And he goes, no. And I was like, well, I know a guy who wouldn't mind making that drive. It's probably going to be at the show anyway. He's got a full microphone setup and he has some pro wrestling commentary experience. And if you'd want him, at the booth with Mo, I'm sure he'd love to do it. And Dustin was like, yeah, man, let's make it happen. So um, nothing better than a couple of podcasters who are used to sitting in front of microphones for a few hours anyway, um, getting to do it in front of a live audience.
Oh yeah, and I've kind of joked with him that I might not be as over the top as Pat McAfee, but I'm almost seeing myself as the Pat McAfee of the team there, because that's just my natural personality. Just coming
Absolutely.
up with seeing random things happen in matches and then just coming up with some random thing to say about like that whole thing I mentioned about oh, he's gonna need a change of pants after that one.
Yeah. I'm
Little shit.
yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. It'll be a great time. It looks like it's going to be a great show, obviously for a great cause.
Oh yeah.
And like I said, the opportunity to interact and see some guys that I haven't been around in many years it'll be fun.
Oh yeah. Definitely fun time. August 25th. We'll hell tickets to your live event, tickets to that. We'll get, you know what, send me the link on Messenger for your tickets. I got the one
Absolutely.
for Fight Against Suicide. We'll get all of that in the description. But now I got two categories. My name game we're going to start off with, where I name off some people, you give me quick thoughts on them.
Okay.
And the first two here have actually both been on the show. First one, Big Bronson Reed.
Finally, getting his opportunity to shine, which probably should have happened years ago. But Bronson's a guy like Bam Bam Bigelow that
Mm.
is too fucking big to be that agile. It doesn't make
Oh,
any goddamn sense. He's so good. And I really love what they're doing right now with him and Gable and Sami Zayn.
oh yeah.
People are finally getting to see just how good Bronson Reed can be. And
Oh,
we haven't scratched the surface.
oh yeah. No, I remember, I told you the night that I met him was actually him and another relatively beefy guy and Jeff Cobb going up against each other. And
Absolutely.
remember, we called it the Hoss fight to end all Hoss fights. And just remember seeing, both of those guys, the way they moved around and being close enough that, like, when they chopped each other, seeing the individual beads of sweat flying off
Yeah.
of them, it was something else. All right. Next up, somebody I think the sky is not even the limit for, Billy Starks.
Uh, Another one of those people like Orange Cassidy that you're like, I didn't, I never see her as a heel. So when that happened, when she won the Ring of Honor Women's Television Championship and kind of did her heel turn, you're like, well, this is something new. Um, I think she's so good for being so young, and like you said, we have not even begun to scratch the surface of how good she's going to be. Um, I would put Billy Starks in a tier that she's one of the best female wrestlers on the planet right now, and it may be another decade before she hits her prime. That's
Oh,
scary.
oh yeah. Like, I had her on right after she finished her junior year of high school.
Mhm.
And then I got to see her at Revolver, where the one of the pictures on the YouTube channel that was
Yeah,
from there. And yeah, that was fun time getting to see in person. It was like a scramble match or something. But yeah, no, just such a bubbly personality that yeah, you wouldn't think the whole heel turn, but man, the stuff they got going with her and Athena is just freaking gold. And I've said it a few times that it's like she's already accomplishing so much at such a young age.
Yep.
Think of where she's going to be when she starts thinking about retirement.
Yeah. Well, I think she has the potential. And I know I'm saying this at a crazy young age for her. I think she has the potential to go down as one of the greatest American women's wrestlers of all time.
I no argument from me there. Now we kind of talked about this guy a little bit. He hasn't been on the show, but I have got to talk to him. And he was the guy going up against Bronson Reed, Jeff Cobb.
Ooh. Um, Jeff Cobb just won that New Japan World Television
Title.
Championship. Yeah. He's great. Another guy that's way more agile than he should be for his size. Um, I think New Japan is the right place for his style. I think he's had an opportunity to flourish there. I think with Will Ospreay leaving, that faction and what they can do with Jeff Cobb, I think he just continues to get bigger and better. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jeff Cobb, make a deep run in this year's G1, and maybe challenge for the IWGP Championship in at a major New Japan show in Japan.
Yeah.
And there's one thing to and no offense intended to anyone who's wrestling on these smaller New Japan shows in the United States, but I could see Jeff Cobb being a guy who challenges for the title in Tokyo,
Yeah.
or
Yodo.
um, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think he is the next big American star for New Japan.
Oh yeah. I 100% agree. Yeah. And you know what? Maybe, you know, Will Ospreay leaving, maybe that's a little bit of a blessing in disguise for him because, somebody leaves, it often happens. Somebody else gets pushed up there. Maybe this is gonna be his moment. I sure hope
Yeah.
so.
I was just thinking about that with New Japan, when Kenny and the Bucks left, and a lot of people were like, well, New Japan is dead. They don't have any big foreign stars. And then you see guys like Will Ospreay step up. You see guys like Jay White step up. I think this is an opportunity for um, two guys that I have on my radar, obviously Jeff Cobb and then Gabe Kidd. I see
Mm.
Gabe Kidd stepping up in that role as well, and being very, very good at it.
Oh yeah, there was another guy that I would put in there, but I guess medically had to retire.
Yeah,
But
I saw that too. That's
Jeff Coughlin,
yeah, yeah. That sucks because if you've seen Alex Coughlin wrestle,
yeah,
that
Alex
man,
Coughlin. Did I say
yeah,
Jeff? Fuck.
that that man has the ability to do things physically that don't make any sense, and he's unbelievably strong,
Oh
functional
yeah.
strength, very much like strong in a sneaky way, like
Mm.
Cesaro,
Oh
or sorry, Claudio Castagnoli. But
yeah.
yeah, it's unfortunate that he's had to retire because he had a bright future ahead of him, and
Oh yeah.
to be done with wrestling so young is tragic.
Oh yeah. When I've actually got to meet him one time, and it was actually at that Warrior show. They had
Sure, yeah,
they had him going up against Uemura, and
yeah,
there's I think he's done it in multiple shows, but there's a spot where he's like he got knocked down,
yep,
and then he ends up getting Uemura in a headlock, but then lifts him vertical for a suplex,
yeah. From
stands up.
from sitting on his ass, and it's it's the most insane thing ever, and the way that he does it. No offense intended to the Creed brothers, because I saw one of the Creeds do it on, I think, an episode of Raw recently. It's also very impressive, but the way Coughlin does it is Man, it's the same way I felt about the first time I saw like Claudio Castagnoli or Brian Cage hit that suplex from
Mm,
an opponent standing on the apron and he lifts him
yeah.
all the way up from like the second rope. It's crazy, but
Oh
that
yeah.
move it doesn't make any sense.
Oh
We're
yeah.
basically doing like a Turkish get up with a 200-pound man. It doesn't make any sense.
Oh yeah. Now another guy that has kind of a famous bit in wrestling, the big nope spot, Samoa Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe has been really good for a long, long time. And he's probably lost a step, obviously, with age from I think that period of time between 2005 and 2006, where he had the trilogy with Punk in Ring of Honor, where he wrestled Kenta Kobashi in Ring of Honor, where he had that triple threat in TNA with Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles. This is probably a controversial thing to say. I think that time period, and it only lasted a few months, maybe a full year, from 2005 to 2006, uh, may have been the Samoa Joe may have been the greatest wrestler to ever live in that time period. The style that he was wrestling was unlike anything we've really ever seen. Um, and I think a lot of people will fail to realize just how influential Samoa Joe became to an entire generation of wrestlers, and so long after he is retired. But Joe has it all. He's the total
Mm,
package, and it's a shame that he was never world champion in WWE because um, he's great in the ring. He can talk. He has this he has this aura about him that even getting up there in age, he still retains.
yeah.
Every time he enters the arena, it's much like Taz in the late '90s. It's like or the way that Bronson Reed has it as well. It's like someone is going to die in the ring with Samoa Joe. He is there to fuck somebody up, and you feel that.
No,
In a way, in a completely different way, but in a way, Eddie Kingston has that too, where it's
I
like,
was gonna say, yeah.
oh, Eddie Kingston takes pro wrestling very seriously. Samoa Joe takes wrestling very seriously. You can feel that when you watch it wrestle.
Oh yeah, and those are the types of people I gravitate towards in wrestling. Those intense personas, the Samoa Joes, the Eddie Kingstons, that you could just tell in their face in the promos they just ooze it, and I get
Yeah,
excited thinking about it. And he has showed in his time with AEW so far that when you let him be that just that intense Samoan submission machine bulldozer that he
yep,
is, that man, what he can do. He's just doing flat out amazing. Like, I was obviously rooting for Swerve at Dynasty, but there was that part of me that's like, oh man, does it have to be Joe? But then, hell, Swerve getting the title, happy for him.
I remember just talking about Swerve for a second. He had just left WWE and he wrestled at Revolver, a show called Swerve's House, and I can't even remember who he was originally supposed to wrestle. But that match got canceled, and then he ended up wrestling Athena. And my wife, who's not the biggest wrestling fan, we got front row tickets to that show, and I wanted her to sit, up close and personal, to truly appreciate professional wrestling. And she fell in love with Athena that night, fell in love with Swerve. And I remember my friend Zach, after that match was over, I said, those two are going to be superstars in
Oh, yeah.
wrestling. And now you see Athena. Um, Athena is the main event scene in Ring of Honor.
Oh, yeah.
She's the reason that I watch. And Swerve is the world champion of probably the second biggest company in the world. And
Oh,
both of them deserve it. They
oh,
just
totally.
they ooze that charisma, they ooze that talent, and if you've never had an opportunity to watch someone like that, uh, up close and personal, in an intimate environment, I don't know if you truly appreciate just how good they are.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I had the pleasure of it was a different Revolver show getting to see Swerve, where him and Keith Lee were still the AEW tag champs at the time,
Oh yeah, that's right.
and it was him and Keith Lee versus Matthew Palmer and Rich Swann.
Yeah,
And oh
fun
god,
match.
oh dude, that spot where Keith Lee chops Palmer, and then they do that like, oh, he's dead, and then they play the RAP on the
Yeah,
screen. Oh god. And I remembered I was a little bummed out at that show because Swerve wasn't out. Well, Swerve or Keith Lee wasn't out there for that meet and greet they normally do before.
sure, sure.
And I had figures for them to sign. I'm like, well, shit. And I'm literally walking out to my car, and I see somebody filming a promo in the parking lot. And I'm like, let me see. And I get closer, and it's Swerve. So I'm like, I'll just stand back here and let them finish.
Yeah.
Dude, one of the nicest dudes ever. And it was funny for me because looking back at like the feud that he had with Hangman, and it's like, holy crap, he can play one sadistic son of a bitch.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
it's yeah, he's the total package. And to see him to see AEW strike while the iron's hot with him, it has been an awesome
mm,
thing to see, because there's so many times where it's like, hey, like the whole world right now kind of feels like this particular wrestler should be a world champion, or you should pull the trigger with him, and then they don't.
yeah,
Um, I think, maybe Chad Gable is a good example of that. Maybe his time to shine should have came a few years ago. That's neither here nor there, but
yeah,
to see them do it with Swerve when it's like it's Swerve's time, and for them to realize it like we all have, it has been really cool to see.
oh yeah. It's still on my bucket list too, and hopefully with the current storyline they're doing, Nana isn't going to turn on him too. I sure as hell hope not, because it's still on my
Ooh,
damn list to meet Prince Nana and do that. Like I'll literally do the damn dance with him. Like I
yeah.
typical white guy. I got no fucking rhythm, but I will do if I get the chance to meet him. I will do that fucking dance.
It's interesting because they put Nana and Swerve together, and it's like, this doesn't really make sense, because Swerve doesn't really need a mouthpiece. And
You don't.
then you put the two together, and it worked so well. Nana added so much to Swerve's character and his not mystique. Mystique's not a good word for it, but just his overall presentation. Um, Nana's Nana's the best. Nana's been the man for so many years, and then
No, yeah.
kind of went unnoticed by a lot of mainstream wrestling fans. So much like an Eddie Kingston, or a Chuck Taylor, guys that were indie darlings, to see them get some mainstream spotlight in AEW has been a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. Now on to some random questions. Some might be wrestling related, some might not be. Some might have absolutely nothing to do with anything we've talked about so far. So I give you the question, first answer that pops in your head.
Mhm.
Now, you and I have both been wrestling fans for quite a long time. What is a thing you would say is the craziest in match moment that you have witnessed?
Craziest in match moment. First thing that comes ahead to my head is obviously Hell in a Cell.
Mm,
Um, I mean, 3 minutes into the match, and Foley takes one of the craziest bumps of all time, and then the match goes on another 15 minutes. Like that's one of the craziest things I can think of for sure.
what about one that you've been there for in person?
Ooh, does it have to be in a match?
No.
I think the most impactful thing that I've seen was I went to a Monday Night Raw in Kansas City right before WrestleMania 25. It was the Raw where Randy Orton handcuffed Triple H to the turnbuckle, and then DDT'd Stephanie from the second rope, and kissed her when she was passed out. Uh, Nuclear heat. The crowd went bananas. Um, unfortunately, the match that followed at WrestleMania 25 didn't quite live up to how good that story was. But uh, yeah, Orton was a menace
Oh God,
heading into
yeah.
20 WrestleMania 25. That's probably the craziest like holy shit moment I've seen in person. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Now, yeah, the Hell in a Cell, obviously one of the craziest moments ever because who would think you'd even be able to get up after that? But then I have some of the craziest ones I've witnessed. One involved a mutual friend of ours, Donnie Pepper Cricket, in Piggy in the Bank, where they have the ladder bridge between the
Yep.
guardrail and the ring apron. He had a guy up like Sheamus's White Noise and then jumped on the ladder and the ladder.
Yeah.
And then I think really all I got to say about the other ones because it involved two different matches. Only thing I really got to say is Second Gear Crew.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I've seen them all together live twice, and some of the absolute craziest shit I've ever seen. Matthew Justice jumping off a scaffold both
Yep.
times, and including that last one where it was like a war games type of match. Masha Slamovich involved. And, oh my god. Yeah.
So
I
I have another answer for best holy shit moment, and it's gonna matter to like 10 people that watch your show. But I know it matters to us, so that's all
okay.
that counts. I was at PWP and I was just there as a fan. And it is their annual like big battle royal show.
One of my favorite shows of theirs.
Chris Havius is in the ring and the clock starts to count down. And all of a sudden, Jason Strife's name shows up on the screen.
I was there.
And I just remember looking around to all my friends and I'm like, this, this isn't happening. This is a joke, right? This is Chris Havius and PWP's funny joke, their funny jab at Magnum Wrestling. Because if you know some of the backstage politics, Magnum, mostly Jason Strife himself, and PWP have been butting heads for many, many years. And then for them to put that to the side for some good business.
Oh
Um,
man, the
the
matches.
crowd go the crowd goes nuts. Strife comes out, has a face to face with Havius, and I remember my favorite moment in independent wrestling, in local independent wrestling. Havius looks right at Strife and he asks, "Are you lost, motherfucker?" And the whole crowd starts chanting Strife's name, just Strife, Strife, Strife. And Strife just like puts a finger to his ear and he goes, "No, I'm pretty sure I'm in the right place." And I mean, you kind of become jaded because you know these guys on a personal level, so it's hard to get goosebumps, you know,
Oh, that was
around
one.
around your friends. Um, but man, that was a goosebumps moment. Just knowing how much real life animosity Strife had for PWP. Um, that real life animosity that caused him to create Magnum Wrestling in the first place.
Yeah.
And to watch that get squashed long enough for the fans of both promotions to have a really, really cool payoff was something really special to see. And
Oh,
even though I was there as a fan, I went with guys that were on that show that night. And so I was hanging out backstage before the show. Strife wasn't back there. And so um, as a guy, like I said, that knows a lot of these guys personally, um, to have a legitimate surprise like that on a local indie show was really special. That
oh yeah.
a moment I'll never forget.
Oh yeah. And hell, the match that Chris and Strife had after that was like a street fight, whatever.
Yeah,
One of those no holds barred sort of things. Oh God,
yeah,
I was there for that one too. Whew,
wonderful
loved
stuff.
it. All right. Now you have also dabbled in music. Now I know I listen a little bit of everything. And with traveling here and there, everybody has different playlists. What are some songs that you would have on a playlist for yourself?
Oh man, a little bit of everything. Like I've really gotten into Coheed and Cambria about 20 years too late, and I love them. Um, I I went to a concert earlier this week and I saw Stained and
Mm,
Seether again, a band that I probably should have seen 20 years ago. But then I listened to a lot of like girly pop as well. So I've been into like Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter and Renee Rapp and Tyla and so a lot of different stuff. I think if you had to look through my playlist though, I think you'd probably see the artist you'd see the most of would probably be for hip hop, Kendrick Lamar,
okay.
and then for I'm really into like indie pop. There's a band that everyone knows just from their music videos. They're the band that they danced on treadmills for their first
Mm,
video. OK Go. It's one of my favorite bands of all time. So a lot of OK Go, a lot of Kendrick Lamar.
okay. Yeah, people often don't see me as a guy that listens to any hip hop, but literally just on my way home, I had this playlist that I guess I've forgotten these songs were on there, but Method Man Bring the Pain,
Oh yeah,
one of
yeah.
my favorite songs. And then there's one with him and Busta Rhymes that, like, oh God, it goes hard. And
I when I was so my family, I grew up with my grandparents, very old, very white, and we went to Branson twice a year for 12 years. So we spent a 2 weeks there every time we go. So if you do the math, I think I've spent 26 times, two times. I probably spent an entire year of my life in Branson, Missouri, right? And there's a dollar store, a true dollar store. Everything there's a dollar. And when I was maybe 11 or 12 years old, maybe a little older than that actually, mid teens, I found a DVD of Busta Rhymes. Everything Remains Raw. It was like a live performance. It's like 2 hours long, and I played that DVD so often that I scratched the shit out of it in like the course of 4 months. It was just every summer I'd come home from, I had to have been like maybe 16. I had a summer job cleaning the high school as a janitor, getting it ready for the next year. So like scrubbing or not scrubbing floors, but like deep cleaning and like cleaning carpets, shampooing carpets and waxing like hardwood floors. And I came home and I watched that every night and memorized the whole thing, and it's what made me want to get into like hip hop music for a short time in college, and yeah, so
oh yeah.
all
Then
because I found a Busta Rhymes DVD in Branson, Missouri, of all places.
then for me, obviously, yeah, people that know me know I'm a big country guy. I literally, speaking of, I have signed figures, but behind the camera here, one of my moments I still don't believe happened actually over at Stir Cove. And
It's a great venue.
one of my favorite country singers, Dirks Bentley, was performing.
Yeah,
And I just wanted to see how close I could get. And I ended up like two people from the stage. And there's one part where he asked where his beer drinkers are at. And I'm just like, what? And then he points my direction. I'm like, no, he ain't pointing at me. Well, that little concrete path there,
yeah.
he's walking down that towards me, helps the security guys get me over the barricade. And before I know it, I'm on stage with Dirks Bentley, and somebody comes out with the beer cans pre done for shotgunning beers, and I'm shotgunning a beer with Dirks Bentley.
That's awesome.
And one thing, I still got the can,
That's awesome.
and the thing behind the camera here, a little ways into that show, it was towards the end, points back at me, and then I'm like, what is he doing? He goes to one of his band members, takes the guitar he's playing, starts motioning for something to write with. I'm like, no. Like in my head, I knew, but I'm like, no. I got the freaking guitar hanging up on my wall over there.
That's incredible. That's those things that, not a lot of people get those opportunities, those moments. So
No, yeah.
yeah.
Hell, my wife and I actually just almost a year ago, the guy that played the song that was our first dance, Luke Combs, we went to his Arrowhead Stadium show, and we already had pit tickets. We were excited. Well, she finds out that she won VIP meet and greets.
Oh
So
wow.
we get to meet the guy that did our first dance song.
That's very cool. That's very
And
cool.
she was crying, and I'm standing there telling him that this was like the 10th show of his that we'd been to.
Oh wow. That's cool. Yeah, like I said, those are moments that not a lot of people get. So you gotta
Oh, yeah.
cherish those moments, those one of a
Oh,
kind
for
moments.
sure. Now, you, in one of your recent Ice Cream Sunday podcast episodes, talked about going, it was that tattoo convention.
Yeah.
And, I've got a few, some that, you know, this is one I'm proud of for my military. All of mine have a story, but one thing I was curious about, because I've been curious about getting one myself.
Yeah.
Wrestling related tattoos. Would you ever get one?
I came very close to getting one. So, I don't know if you remember way back in the day, probably early 2010s, there was a brand called Defend Indie Wrestling out of the
Mm,
UK.
yeah.
Um, their logo was just like a small turnbuckle, and everyone within that group got like a small turnbuckle tattoo. It's just the hook and the coils. And I thought about getting something like that, or like a wrestling ring, or something very small, kind of inconspicuous. So I've always thought about getting like a wrestling thing, especially when you can't see it because like I'm stupid and I covered all my tattoos up. But I have the word love. There's a nonprofit organization called To Write Love on Our Arms. It's basically, write the word love to remind yourself to love yourself instead of, cutting yourself. And
Mm,
so I have love on this wrist, and I'm, for the most part, no longer suicidal. And so I thought about getting the turnbuckle on my other wrist. So it's more, instead of love yourself, it's like I love wrestling. My way of saying like I love
mm,
wrestling. But
no.
um, um, yeah, I would definitely get a wrestling tattoo. I just haven't figured out. All of my tattoos have a story as well, and so I'd have to figure out what that story would be and how to make it into a cool design. So
Mm.
I haven't figured that out yet, but yeah, I could see myself getting a wrestling related tattoo.
Yeah, I've debated on a couple. Like all time favorite Stone Cold, the skull logo on his broken
On
skull
his yeah,
spear. I've debated that, and then the the Bray Wyatt symbol with the what is it, the
the
moth or
the
firefly.
moth. Yep.
I I've debated that, and I actually have a story that it would kind of tie into the podcast with it, because before Dutch got signed to AEW Ring of Honor, I had actually had him on,
Mhm.
and I think this was right after the Righteous lost the Ring of Honor 6-man title, and I remember I was excited to have him on because I've been a fan of his, and I go to it was either that I posted the actual episode, or it was just that, hey, I had done this with him, and I'm literally on my way home from work, and I see this that symbol pop up on a Twitter alert, and I'm like, what the fuck? So I get to a point, I think I'm at a red light, so I pull it up. Bray Wyatt liked the damn tweet, and I'm like, about to drop my damn phone. So, and then I remembered messaging him later, and I'm like, are you friends with Bray Wyatt? And he's like, oh yeah. I'm like, that explains it. And then shortly after he unfortunately passed, I didn't even think I was going to get a response from Dutch, because I'm like, that is one of those times where it's like obviously emotional. I just reached out to him saying, you know what? I don't know if you're going to read this, if you're going to even want to respond, but I'm just giving him my condolences, basically.
Sure.
And he
Yeah, of
actually
course.
responded back. So it was that would be my little way of paying tribute to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to find something if I got a wrestling tattoo, I'd have to find something that's like aesthetic, like um something that looks nice. And a lot of the things that I get, so I have two tattoos that are both um kind of I don't know if tribute is the right word, but they pay homage to my Laotian heritage. So
Yeah.
my father is an immigrant from Laos, raised water buffalo on a farm in Laos before he immigrated here. So I got a water buffalo on my left arm. And then Laos is known as the land of a million elephants, and I'm Buddhist, and so I've got an elephant on my right uh, shoulder, my right forearm, or my right bicep, tricep area, and I've got an elephant that has mala beads because I'm Buddhist, and then the Dak Champa, which is the national flower of Laos. I've got like a half sleeve that I just got done uh last month. So it would have to be something with probably vibrant colors to stay with the rest of the kind of tattoos that I have. So
Yeah.
I always thought about getting like a collection of small like lucha masks
Mm,
all over, like on my other side where I have just kind of like random tattoos. And so I've always liked Jushin Liger's mask. I think that would be cool. Um, maybe a Rey Mysterio mask from one of my favorite matches of his, something like that. If
oh
I
yeah.
got something at all, it would have to be something that kind of fits with the rest of the tattoo. So a lot of color and very vibrant colors. But
Oh
I
yeah.
haven't settled on what it would be yet. But yeah, I could definitely see myself getting a wrestling related tattoo. I've been a fan for too long not to have something wrestling related.
Yeah. That's about where I'm at myself. Now, with the name of a show like I have, I feel like I pretty much have to have this on here. Favorite drink, whether it be alcoholic or non, because I've had plenty of people on that for one reason or another don't drink. So try to
Yeah.
be respectful of that.
Absolutely. So you picked the right guy because I work for Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits, and so
Mm.
yeah, I'm all about alcohol in my personal and professional life. I got really into this canned cocktail called the Long Drink recently.
Mm.
It's a gin based cocktail with like citrus soda. So it's basically like if you mix gin and like squirt soda.
Mm.
It's really really good. I don't know if you know the actor Miles Teller from Top Gun.
Yes.
He's one of the brand ambassadors for it.
Uh,
So I got really into the long drink recently, so I like that. I've been drinking this. I'm not sponsored by them, I promise, but this Jameson,
uh,
ready to drink cocktail. This ginger and lime Jameson drink.
oh,
A lot of whiskey, a lot of whiskey, a lot of bourbon. That's what I'm into. So
yeah. I've always been more of a beer guy, but yeah, when it comes to liquor, I've become a whiskey, bourbon, tequila person.
yeah, tequila, man. Like I want to like tequila. I don't think tequila likes me. I don't get hangovers very often, but it's almost every time after I go hard on some margaritas that I wake up with the worst hangovers. So maybe tequila just isn't for me.
That could be. Everybody has their own taste. I know two of my favorites are actually uh, Casamigos, that was had been owned by George Clooney,
Yep, yep. Casamigos is
and
great.
the Rocks brand, Terramana.
I haven't tried Terramana, but I've heard nothing but good things.
Oh, it's good. Like I'm telling you, if you go a little hard on margaritas, sometimes you might want to be careful if Terramana is
Yeah, for
used,
sure, for
because you
sure.
can. you mix that in a margarita, you can barely tell there's any damn alcohol in it.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
No, I've heard great things about it. So
oh yeah, it's a good one. But you bring up something because people have asked me before about, podcasts that get sponsored by different alcohol brands, and they're like, "Oh, you should get one." I'm like, you don't think I haven't tried?
yeah, you should like a local brewery, like
Yeah,
even something local. Yeah, for
oh,
sure.
that's definitely I've been aiming for that because you know getting even a limited time release of a beer named somewhat after the show would be something pretty killer.
See, and I think to your credit, uh, a beer sponsor for a more like adult podcast would probably make sense. We call ourselves Ice Cream Sunday, so I'd love to have like a local ice cream shop sponsor us. But a lot of ice cream shops are family friendly, and I just talk about my wiener on every episode. So I think it would be hard if I was like, hey, so we have this podcast, and then they check it out, and it's just dick and fart jokes for an hour and a half. But
You know what? Funny enough, I actually reached out to Ted and Wally's about maybe sponsoring. They didn't sponsor, but they actually made a Big Mo flavor.
that's awesome. Yeah, yeah. Ted and Wally was fantastic.
Oh yeah, but okay. Before we move on to my last question, you bring up, and this actually just came up like the last day or two when you're talking about dick and fart jokes. Okay, on YouTube, there's this like YouTube page that's all AI generated songs.
Of course, yeah.
And there's this one that it literally sounds similar to like the Temptations. And the title of it is literally I glued my balls to my butthole again.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that. Yeah. Big
Though,
fan, you know.
oh yeah, no, I listen to that and I'm like, oh my God. Like
Yeah.
my wife literally looked over at me and was like, what the fuck are you laughing about? I'm like, you don't want to know.
Being a kid that grew up on like Terminator, Terminator 2, iRobot movies like that, you get kind of scared of AI. And then you realize that there's nothing to be scared of, We're just gonna use AI for dumb shit like that. There's nothing to be scared of.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Lord only knows the shit I would come up with.
Exactly right.
All right. Now, last but not least here, best advice you have or that you've been given, whether it comes to the podcast or hell, life in general.
Oh man, I was just thinking about this, and I'm glad you asked. So I was thinking about some of the best advice that I gotten from pro wrestlers, and I for whatever reason, anytime I talk to someone from the Omaha area, I always think of Strife. And one of the best advice I ever got from Strife was back in 2018. I was kind of struggling with self-image at the time and trying to figure out like what my gimmick was, and I was trying some new things, and some things weren't working, and I won't name any names, but there was a wrestler from the Omaha, Council Bluffs area that was kind of getting under my skin, and I was taking some not so great advice from him, and Strife was just like, "Why the fuck do you care what he says? Like that, this guy's done, he's accomplished nothing in the grand scheme of things. He's accomplished nothing in the business. Um, like keep your head down, do your thing, believe in yourself, and like make sure that you're putting 100% of yourself into it. Because if you're trying to impress somebody else, it's not going to work. It's not authentic. And I think I don't want to speak for him, but I think the reason that Jay Fowler has turned the corner into being undeniably one of the best wrestlers in this area is because this all steel gimmick, this all steel character is just the Justin Fowler that we all know and love, with maybe the intensity turned up a little bit. I think the reason that your show is so successful is because you're not trying to be anything that you're not. You're a wrestling fan who loves to drink beer. And guess what? Your show is a wrestling fan drinking beer and talking about pro wrestling. Ice Cream Sunday is successful because we talk about the things that we love. If I was talking about, I can't even think of a subject, but if it wasn't about video games and pro wrestling and all of the things that I'm into, um, it wouldn't be authentic. And so I guess my best advice would be the advice that Jason Strife gave me 6 years ago, which is um, you know, be your authentic self in everything that you do. And um, if you're gonna get advice from anyone, get advice from the people that you admire. I think we've been doing this long enough, you and I, and podcasting. I'm sure you've, read a YouTuber comment or two that probably pissed you off. And
Yeah.
I just shared a comment from last night from a guy that was not so kind. And then you got to step back and think like, well, I don't even fucking know that guy. I don't know what he's accomplished. Why do I care? Why am I taking advice from this guy? So um be your authentic self, and look to the people that you truly admire for advice and how they do things. If I'm wrestling advice, I'm not a wrestler anymore. And when I was a wrestler, it was for a very short time. But if I could give any young up and coming wrestlers from the area any advice, you know um be your authentic self, and listen to the guys that have listened to the Jay Fowlers, listen to the guys that are traveling the country and making a name for themselves. And um, yeah, that would be my advice for anybody doing anything creative, making any sort of entertainment whatsoever.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you're gonna get a lot of people that talk shit about your art, um, and 99 times out of 100 those people aren't making their own art. So who gives a fuck what they have to say?
Oh yeah. And hell, with my podcast, it's literally me. Like
Yeah,
like I am the one producing, distributing, controlling social media. Like if somebody talks to Drinking at Moe's on social media, they're talking to me.
yeah,
So yeah, I put a lot of work into this.
yeah. And I think
But
that's why we're so passionate about it. That's why you're so passionate about drinking at Moe's. That's why I'm so passionate about Ice Cream Sunday. Um, I think people watch your show and they're like, oh, it's just a dude talking about wrestling over Zoom. And they don't understand all of the things that goes into editing the show, publishing the show, promoting the show on social media. It's a lot more than the hour and a half that you spend talking into a microphone. That's the easy part.
yeah,
You know, that
that's the easy part.
the easy part's talking about the wrestling. The everything that goes on behind the scenes is the hard part. And um, I think about our live event, and the hard part there is, getting sponsors and signing contracts with a band to come here, and finding artists for the art show part of it, and promoting it, and designing flyers. And there's just so much that goes into it that people don't understand. And then um, people that don't have their own shit going on get on social media and
Yeah.
talk shit to people who do. And that can be very frustrating. But
Oh yeah. No. And it's being able to push that all aside and just being your authentic self. Now, before we go, where can people find you and the Ice Cream Sunday podcast on social media? And if they don't already have their eyes on you, they can go ahead and get them there.
yeah, of course. So on almost every social media, we are at IC Sunday Podcast. I as in ice, C as in cream, Sunday like the day of the week. Either that, or you can just Google Ice Cream Sunday Podcast, Sunday like the day of the week. We should pop up. All of our stuff is like an orange logo somewhere. So if you see black and orange and Ice Cream Sunday, that's probably us. We're based out of Des Moines, Iowa. We produce our show there weekly, and yeah, would love for you to check us out on. We have reels and TikToks and YouTube shorts, short little clips from our podcast if you want to check that out. And then the full length version on YouTube, Spotify, every other podcast app, whatever you're into, whatever you listen on, we're there. So we would love for you to check us out.
Oh, definitely. We'll get all of that in the description. And well, that is about it. My dog is looking like he's bored out of his damn mind. And hell, my wife is probably expecting me. So probably ought to get going. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me tonight. And best of luck out there with that live show coming up. I look forward to seeing you in August. And hell, you ever need a guest? I mean, I could always make a John up there.
Yeah, we'll have to get you on Ice Cream Sunday. It'll be a great time.
Oh, yeah, it'll be fun. Well, thank you again, and let's fucking go.